I think the most difficult part is managing growth. Managing growth, managing finances, because your idea that was a baby that was born out of your bedroom that became a small shop in Torrance of 1,500 square feet to a 5,000 square foot building, and it's growing. There's more moving parts. There's more people. There's more risk. You're buying more inventory now, and you're hanging your ass out a little bit farther than you ever did. You're taking out a loan against your house that you bought. Now you finally have a house, and now you're taking a loan out against it so you can finance more inventory or secure the inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So those things, were hectic, especially as a young 24-year-old kid that finished high school, tried to go to college, but got swept away by the sport of BMX.
This is the Gold Medal Mindset, where we bring you all things winning in business, sport, and life. I'm Dr. Jason Richardson, pro BMX world champion and Pan Am Games gold medalist. Now I'm a professional speaker, author, and winning mindset coach. Thanks for joining in. Get ready to mind for gold as we challenge your perceptions to change your results. Hey, back again with the Gold Medal Mindset. I'm super excited. Actually, I'm super embarrassed. People, I have to tell you that this is our second go-round of recording this podcast because your faithful, trustworthy host, did not press save the last time I recorded with this gentleman. So I came back with my tail between my legs, and he was gracious enough to be a guest yet again on the Gold Medal Mindset, Mr. Bob Haro.
Yay!
Thanks for coming back.
Welcome. Thanks, Jason. It's my BMX love affair, and you as my pal, I'm here to support.
Yeah,
you.
So the BMX roots run deep, and we're gonna just breeze over the BMX story, because really, your story's like everybody knows the story. You made the number plates, and you rode bikes, and then you became an artist, and then you started this company, and anyways, keep going. Finish it off.
Exactly that. No, it's, we can touch on things, but I don't know if it's too tired of a story to share with your listeners, but I think most avid BMX people would know the story, and if you don't, I'm just a Google away.
True, you're a Google away. But for those who don't, because there are listeners who are not riders, they don't ride BMX, but really, you are an entrepreneur's entrepreneur, which is the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because it's, yes, I'm a sports psychologist. Yes, I work with people who want to win, but that's kind of boring if it's just one aspect. So, I consider you winning in life, because you always seem to, put out these cool flyers inviting people to these awesome parties down in Mexico, and it's about friendship, and it's about service, and it's about, yes, doing well at your profession. So that's why I wanted to have you on, because you're a neat guy in that sense that you really recognize the experience of everything versus just making the buck. Not that making the buck's a bad thing.
No, it's not. No, it helps. It helps. Well, so where do you start?
With that? So you made these number plates at the bicycle BMX track for people to use, and that became a thing. You had to come back the next week with more because they were selling, and you were doing. And you also an artist, and the bottom line is you started a company, and it was during the birth of a sport that was just going through the roof, and you saw a need and filled it.
Yeah, I guess we have to talk about the beginning a bit. For
the
people that don't know the story. So, my story in BMX starts out like any other kid's story in BMX. It was a sport of passion. Something that I liked. I was always a sporty kid, normal things, playing football and baseball and things like that for fun, just not on any league, but in the neighborhood. There was always sports activities going on. And again, growing up as a SoCal kid, born and raised, action sports before they had the fancy name of action sports was stuff you did. You rode skateboards, you rode BMX bikes, you rode motocross, you surfed, and you could do it all. And
in one day.
all in one day, yeah. And if you had a car, you could drive to the snow if there was snow.
Yeah.
But doing all of those sports were super influential to me as a young teen kid. Skateboarding for sure was it was very it was blowing up and growing up in the 70s, and that had a major influence on me as far as influencing my style of riding as a BMX rider. So that's really where the freestyle side of things came about. So as this teenage kid that at the time I was racing motocross, and I was super into that and training and practicing, and I wanted to be a pro motocross racer. The reality was I didn't have enough money to be competitive, because that's a sport that requires money so you can have new bikes and equipment and travel.
Generally motorsports are on the pricey side, right?
It is, yeah. My parents didn't support that. Plus, it really wasn't as fashionable as it is today. Back then it was this kind of more European sport, if you will. A lot of the European riders came over here and they won the championships, and they were schooling the Americans. But it was a good time to be a kid and be into motocross and stuff like that. But at the same time, I had my dirt bike and was riding and racing. I was racing 100 cc's and cc bikes and 125. I had a 125 Honda Elsinore. My brother had a BMX bike, and I didn't even have a BMX bike. I had like a little Schwinn bike that I had tricked out with motocross bars and heavy duty rims and all that kind of stuff, and knobby tires. My brother he had the first proper BMX bike.
Right, and this is back when the bikes were essentially, it was like, okay, the adults are riding the motorcycles, even though the kids rode them, but the adults are riding the motorcycles, so the kids are going to emulate what the big guys are doing on the motorcycles.
Yeah, I mean, having a bicycle back then, it was mostly what you did. You were kind of emulating what, either if you had a motocross bike, you emulated what you did on your dirt bike, or what your friends did, or what their parents did. So that was kind of the start of it before the sport really took off. And all of a sudden, I don't know what year it was, 74, 5, whatever the year was, all of a sudden there's some BMX tracks popping up. BMX is starting to happen. On any Sunday comes out. The movie comes out, in the opening scene, there's a gang of long-haired kids, SoCal kids, making motorcycle sounds and hitting jumps.
Whap, yeah, it's a classic scene.
We saw that and we got all fired up. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to ride bikes. We wanted to ride moto. We wanted to ride BMX. So that was, for me, was a tipping point, influential moment that got me into BMX. Then, the combination of right down the street from my house where I grew up here in San Diego, they built a skate park. So, we would skateboard there when the park was open. And then at night, because they didn't allow bikes in the park, we would throw our bikes over the fence and we'd ride in the park.
That still happens today.
It still happens today. So so that was good fun.
Don't go to Venice with a BMX bike. Anyways, sorry, that's another.
That's all right. But all those little events happened, and eventually we we talked the owners of the park into allowing BMX bikes in there, and we started riding our bikes in the park, and then we started trying. And I say I used to ride with my sister's boyfriend John. His name is John Schwagen, and John and I rode together all the time. I mean, I'm sure. If there are riders out there or athletes out there listening, you always have somebody that maybe is your training partner or your best pal that pushes you. And John was that guy. He pushed me all the time. He was actually a better rider than me, and he should have been much more famous than he is today. But, I moved to Los Angeles where BMX, the magazines were, and that changed my course as far as getting into the business. So I kind of jumped ahead.
No, you jumped ahead, but I'm glad you jumped ahead that way. That was good, because you moved to Los Angeles to work for the magazine, correct? As an artist or a test? I know you were a test rider.
Yeah, I got, I was probably 18 years old. I had BMX Action magazine had come out. Now there's finally a glossy magazine in the sport of BMX. I think I was about 4 issues into this new magazine, and I thought I should send the magazine, Bob Osborne, the publisher, my work. I sent him some of my cartoons, my sketches, and I met him at a race in Los Angeles, and he liked what I was doing and offered me a job.
Okay, hold that thought. So here on the Gold Medal Mindset, like to me, that is my friend Greg Frederick, who you know. He would say that would be a trigger moment, and probably not to you because it comes so natural. But there's so many kitchen table ideas that don't ever get to market. There's so many kitchen table drawings, sketches. You know, people change the world while they're having drinks at the bar, right? But not really changing the world, because then they go home, go to sleep, wake up, and just go back to drudgery. They go back to the cubicle. They go back to whatever it is they do. But you know, and we didn't even get into the product part of it yet, because you did see a need, and you were making number plates, kind of customized number plates for these bikes for these kids at your local race. But you're 4 issues in, and you're thinking, I want to draw for this magazine, or I should probably send them in. But how many people, and I can tell you how many people, I don't know how many people the number, but I know there's a lot of people that think that they, air quote, should do something, and they don't do it. They sit. And I've noticed that about you. So you saw a need. Hey, I can probably create cool looking number plates for everyone. Boom, I'm going to do that. Wow, I like to draw. I could probably create a cool cartoon for this new magazine. Boom, let me send them some art. Let me send the editor some artwork. So what is it, and this is a hard question, what is it in your makeup, do you suppose, that causes you to pull the trigger on these things?
I think the only I have to go back to when I worked at BMX Action Magazine. I worked for Bob Osborne, and he used to have sayings that he would say to us. And one of the sayings that comes to my mind was, you make your own luck. And so, you know, it's easy enough to talk about things, but I really believe you have to commit yourself. You got to commit yourself to doing things, or create your own opportunity. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what it is, you know, and I wasn't thinking about it at the time as a kid, but I just in my head realized, you know, I thought that I would really like to work for this magazine. And so I tried to create an opportunity for myself, and it opened up a door, and it completely changed my life. That moment absolutely changed my life. Me sending my artwork to this 4-issue old publication gave me a platform. And, you know, as a young 18-year-old kid, and your work is suddenly in print, and you're getting paid for doing what you love to do anyway, that really fueled me. That energized me to do more. I was in. And then as I became was working at the magazine, I was working on staff. Bob Osborne, the publisher, really didn't. He just thought I was an artist and a kid that rode a bike. He really didn't know that I knew how to ride.
You were decent?
That I was decent, you know. So, you know, he kind of gave me a chance. Funny. I showed him, everything. All the focus back in those days was completely on race, because BMX racing was what it was all about. Yeah. I was a racer too. I did that, but I wasn't that good. I was okay. I was more of a show off, and that's where the whole freestyle thing came in. So, again, working for Oz at the magazine, I one day say, "Hey Oz, I'd like to show you, you know, this thing we call trick riding." Because that's what we called it back then. It wasn't called freestyle. It wasn't as didn't have as sexy of a term, if you will.
Do you know who came up with that name, or where
freestyle?
That came from?
Yeah, a friend of mine, D. David Morin, that worked at Skateboarder Action Now magazine. Him and I worked together, and he helped me write a freestyle book, and he really coined the name freestyle.
Oh!
So that was it. David put that together.
That was that's deep. I'm really happy, because that's I feel like we just uncovered this huge treasure just now. All right.
So that kind of helps. So I guess where I'm going with the
Birth
story
of
is again, well, I guess is again, you know, creating another opportunity. And again, it wasn't thought out. It was just, I happened to mention to Bob that, hey, I have this type of writing that I do. Would you like to check it out? Him being a journalist that he is, and a photographer, he was excited about it, and in 1979, he did his first article on the, you know, trick riding is what it was called. Again, it wasn't called freestyle. And from that 2-page spread in a early BMX publication, that was a game changer that changed my focus from being a racer to being a dedicated freestyle rider. And R.L. Osborne and myself, who was his son, we would ride and practice together all the time. And we started, as kids do, you try to outdo each other with your tricks, and things evolve and so on and so forth. So again, another little tipping point moment, but the platform was the magazine that he, again, published it, and then it became real, or more real.
What was the circulation in the heyday? I mean, if you know of that magazine.
I don't recall.
But because I remember being in New Jersey, and when I got introduced to the sport, it was 1979 or 80. Mm-hmm. But I remember going into the grocery store and seeing the magazine.
Yeah, they had good distribution back then.
Yeah,
and the sport was quite popular.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And it was just, I remember in that early 80s, like it was just shooting up crazy. And I remember also, because I was young, but I remember there was an energy about the sport at the time, and it was really special because, and I felt it. I couldn't articulate it then, but I really felt like everybody from the riders to the parents to the companies, manufacturers really were, I felt like they felt it was special too, and that they were part of this new thing, whatever this was. It was like this great new thing that was happening. I don't know, just getting a little nostalgic, but I feel like that's
I think you're right.
really important to.
I think it was. I think it was a. I think it was an incredibly innocent time. Mm-hmm. I think it was an incredibly exciting time, and anybody with an idea could participate. You didn't have to. The bar was not so high like nowadays with sports. I mean, every kid was learning the basics, and that was great. All these fundamental tricks, and just tracks were simpler, and tricks were simpler, and so I think everybody had a chance. You didn't. I look at when I look at action sports today, or X Games, or whatever it is. I see these incredible athletes doing these unbelievable moves, highly technical, super gymnastic style moves. And I would imagine as a young kid, I would think, like, could I ever pull that off? Could I ever do a double backflip or triple tail whip or quadruple tail whip?
Well, now it's like double backflip with some other kind of variation in there.
It's so incredible. So I think in the early days or of the sport, it was, everything was more accessible. You could be a hero, in your own town, and and I think everybody at that time participated too. I think there was a movement that happened back then, and again, it was perpetuated by Bob Osborne with the magazine, is that how to have your own factory team, how to have a bike shop team, how to promote BMX in your town. And I think that during those times, every kid in every little town was an ambassador for the sport. Everybody was pitching it and pushing it and participating.
Right.
So I think it was a movement.
It was a movement. And it's so if I were to relate that to nowadays, right? Because we have online and we have platforms, we have Facebook, we have podcasting, we have all these different platforms. Right. Almost too many. But it's the same thing. It's a bunch of people trying to create community and get up, move up the food chain, as it were, within that community, or be some kind of leader, influencer, whatever. But my favorite word that you said was innocent. It was a very innocent time, and I think all of us, again, from professional to a little 5-year-old to manufacturers to parents, we were all very bright-eyed about the sport, which I think makes it special. So if we move forward, how long were you at the bike company before you started your own deal, your own Haro?
So doing the bike
company,
the bike business,
getting in the bike business.
Well, that was a transition of baby steps. It was a lot of little baby steps. So
a lot of base hits, huh?
A lot of base hits. It was a lot of base hits of making products that were fairly simple to make, but I tried to make them special artistically, which I think I did, and they became fairly iconic today. And as we talked about, the number plate was that item. And I could say, as again, a 19, 20-year-old kid, we sold tens of thousands of those plates all over the world, and
More than that, easily more
lots.
than that,
Yeah,
easily more than that.
we sold lots of them, and but that was the product that launched a business for me. That was this first product, and then from there we made a lot of other things. We made pads and brake levers and jerseys, and then gloves and then bags, and then eventually, because I was doing the trick riding, as we called it, and RL and I had started a trick team. The magazine was pushing us. We were riding BMX race bikes, and I talked to my sponsor, which was Torker back in the day, and I said, you know what? I want to make my own freestyle bike. I want to make a dedicated freestyle bike, and
So no one else had that idea.
no one did it.
No one else.
I went on tour.
See, but that's my point. I'm pretty sure someone had the idea to do it, but no one actually did it.
Yeah, who knows? I have no idea.
I'm guessing. I mean, you're smart.
Well, I got,
But my point is
lucky.
I guess the underlying theme of this is execution for me. Like that's what's resonating with me. Maybe that's just on an execution tip, but I feel like you just, something pops in your head and you're like, okay, how do I do this? Or not even how do I do this? Let me get started doing this. And if there's one thing I want to stress, especially if you're not a BMX person listening to this, or you want to get started on something, is to get started. Start yesterday. So you go to your sponsor and say, I want to make a dedicated bike for trick riding, aka freestyle.
For freestyle, yeah. So that's where it started. I mean, I never knew how to fabricate or manufacture anything, a frame or anything like that, and frame and fork. And I had a sponsor. That was Torker back in the day. The Johnson family owned it. It was privately held. They're up in Fullerton in Los Angeles. Nice people, very sweet. They, they supported me. And when I had this idea, they enabled me to do this. I mean, if they would have turned me down, who knows what would have happened?
Mm-hmm.
Would I have run into other roadblocks? Who knows? But they said, yes, let's do it. And we worked together on it. And, so again, it was fortuitous in that respect that they were open-minded enough to try and make something. I think the other thing too, with timing, the luck, I think luck has to do with things as well. And why I say that is, back in those days, everyone's focus in the business was BMX race.
Mm-hmm.
No one was paying attention to BMX freestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So that allowed me several years. Here comes the train.
I love the train.
So that allowed me several years of building this little business. During that time, I had 2 events like that happen. When I was that young teenage kid, started out making number plates, no one really took the category seriously. All the other manufacturers are making hard goods and frames and forks and handlebars. Here's this young guy making number plates. No one really paid attention, but little did they know that we were selling thousands and thousands of number plates at the time. So that allowed me to build a little business. Fast forward, I start working on the freestyle category. I probably bought 25 or 50 frame sets to start out. It was a very small quantity. I don't know the total number, but it was small right out of the gate. It was all baby steps, but I got it started, and that's what started a business.
So what was the funding for that? Did you partner with them? Did you have money in the kitty?
Money in the kitty came from the number plate venture.
Got it.
So all the money that, that I earned from making number plates and all the accessories, I just reinvested back into the business.
Got it.
And as a creative and as an artist, as a designer, the fun part of my business, A, was being a rider, but B, was being a creative, and then kind of addressing the needs of the sport, and what came to my mind, what I thought would be cool, I would make it and design it and build it, and I'd produce it, and it was fun. I've had, we've had some good successes. We've had some failures too. Some things didn't sell so well, and or we didn't buy it right and we couldn't sell it, and so on and so forth. But
it was gravity bikes. How about
gravity
those?
bikes.
Anyways,
That's another.
Google that. What were they called?
That was the F1.
F1. Yeah.
F1 bikes.
F1 bikes. Google that.
Yeah, we did a bike called the Dart. That was
Yeah.
We got pushed into that. We got pushed into that by Shimano. Shimano really wanted that category to be something, and we did. We participated. We got a little off course now.
It was like the mini disc of bikes.
Yeah, we got a little off course, but they were cool and kind of a fun.
It was a fun sideshow.
It was a sideshow.
So it was as a kid reading magazines, like, wait, they're going down this mountain on these bikes that look like
it was kind
airplane
of an experimental.
things.
It was kind of an
fronts of
experimental
airplanes.
time, just making up stuff.
Yeah. Well, but that's any industry, right? You get somewhere, and then someone corporate kind of says, we need a new category, we need to create, and not really necessarily understanding the culture of a thing, right? So they try to create something that's not necessarily there, but that's all right. So
we're now in the
what
business.
point we're now in the business. You're building bikes. So Haro bicycles.
Haro bikes.
Haro bikes.
Haro bikes now.
They're Haro bikes now. Yeah, I'm being careful about that because I'm trying to get anyone in trouble. But at the pinnacle. So what's your age? How old are you when it's like you have your own factory, your own bicycle company?
So I'm probably 23, 24. We're making
This is awesome.
So yeah, we're it's again small quantity frame sets and things like that. So I love when people talk about rider-owned companies. I would say that we were one of the first rider-owned companies. And so I think we're as core as you could be.
Yeah, so there's a lot of learning as you were doing, but I guess, and so I don't want to romanticize the whole thing, or maybe it is just the whole thing's romantic, but what were the things that just absolutely sucked about that? Like going through that process, or maybe it was a design process, or maybe it was like bringing a product to market, or maybe it was just taking on the risk. What was it for you that was probably the most difficult in building that company?
I think the most difficult part is managing growth. Managing finances, because your idea that was a baby that was born out of your bedroom that became a small shop in Torrance of 1,500 square feet to a 5,000 square foot building, and it's growing. There's more moving parts. There's more people. There's more risk. You're buying more inventory now, and you're hanging your ass out a little bit farther than you ever did. You're taking out a loan against your house that you bought. Now you finally have a house, and now you're taking a loan out against it so you can finance more inventory or secure the inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So those things, were hectic, especially as a young 24-year-old kid that finished high school, tried to go to college, but got swept away by the sport of BMX. And I never finished college because I got busy starting a business.
You were in your career.
I was in my career. I was touring the world. I was traveling. I was doing all these different things. So, that took a precedence, and the business and my life had taken my lifestyle as a BMX rider that was my emphasis. So yeah, education. I didn't get the education. So I wasn't like a properly trained business guy, but I was, I feel good that I was at least reasonably smart enough to hire good people around me. And so I had a couple mentors at the time. I had a good accountant and a lawyer that kind of coached me about, if you don't know how to do it, hire people that do. Mm-hmm. And so I did pay attention to that, and that was helpful, and I tried to focus, as I was told, to do what you do best and then hire other people that can do the rest.
Oh, that's good.
Kind of that, it was a bit of that, and I still employ that thought today, is try to bring on people that are smarter than me to get the end result where I want it to be, and so I don't try to do it all. I realize I've got X amount of bandwidth, I've got X amount of skill sets. This is really what I'm good at. Let me focus on that, and all the other stuff, I'm going to find people that can help me.
Did you find it hard at times because you were so young and kind of at the helm of of your own ship? Did you find it hard to deal with other people, or how did other people take it? The fact that you were so young and so successful so soon, seemingly so soon. You'd been at it since you were probably 16, really, with the number plates. But
Yeah, I think it's all a learning curve. I mean, you as a young person, in my family, you know, there wasn't money. There was, my parents worked in a supermarket. Mom and dad worked in a supermarket. I was probably the most successful person in my family.
mm-hmm.
I had a business. I started a business. It's selling products around the world. In a category in a niche sport of BMX. We were the top brand. As a rider in that category, I had, created a category, the sport of freestyle BMX, popularized it. There were other guys, yes, that rode back then, and there were other guys that were good. But I was the package, and
Right.
I don't mean it to be impolite. Again, it's, I put together tours and I promoted the sport and I traveled around the United States for free. I bought a van, we made ramps, we toured, we had a PA system, I'd speak to the crowds that are there, we do a safety demonstration, and then we'd go crazy on ramps and show them, don't do this at
Show
home.
them the unsafe stuff.
Yeah, do the unsafe stuff. So, all these kind of things. So I guess back to your question about how do you handle all that? Yeah, there was definitely some really challenging times as a 20-year-old kid that now was selling millions of dollars a year in a business, and I could kind of do what I wanted. I could buy what I wanted reasonably, within reason, and that comes with a toll because you have people around you that you're not sure are your friends. You have people around you that you don't know who you can trust at times.
So,
so that's a trippy experience.
I remember years ago, I don't know where we were. I think it was an award something or another, Hall of Fame thing, but I remember you telling me something about you had to learn how to say no and how important it was to say no.
Yeah, I mean, I had to learn that with friends and family. I mean, I could tell you that with as the sport was growing up, BMX was growing up. I mean, I remember I got an article in People Magazine. I had the people from People Magazine come to my office, and they did an interview, and they took photos and things like that. So, that was cool. Then the magazine comes out, and you have people that you haven't talked to in years see it. I had people would come to my office and say, "Hey, I saw this article on you and your fifth cousins, people you don't even really know, say, I can't believe you're doing really great like this, and can you help me?" And it was really difficult. You're in your early mid-20s, and how do you turn down somebody you've only met once in your life when you were a kid? It's a trip.
But they say you're family, so there's a little pang of guilt there.
Yeah. So I mean, I think back on my career as a rider in this funny little world of BMX, and the analogy that comes to my mind, it was like being in a pop band. You look at bands today, and they're young people in their late teens, early 20s, and you get caught up in this whirlwind of excitement and media coverage, and you're doing radio interviews, and you're on TV and in different countries doing interviews, and you're doing demos before people, and you're in the magazine, and you're signing stuff. You don't have a coach. You don't have a coach to tell you this is going to get kind of tricky at times. So you have to learn real time how to manage and handle all that stuff. And so there's a lot of pressure that comes with it. I mean, I wouldn't trade any of it, but it's not like sports are much more sophisticated nowadays, where they like what you do with your business. You have an opportunity.
I literally help coach these athletes through those things, because the pressure's still the same.
Yeah, there was none of that. How do you manage your money? How do you handle this adoration, and also sometimes some people are jealous and just don't like you because
the haters, and then the other people that don't say no to you.
Yeah,
everything you do is great.
That's dangerous too. That's really dangerous.
So why sell the business? Was it an offer you couldn't refuse, or was it just time for you to do other things? Or
so the company had grown to a point that it was bigger than what I was capable of handling. And also, it was an opportunity. So,
Yeah, good.
I think, for me, the bottom line is I'm a creative guy. I didn't set out in the business to make money. I set out to do the business because I like BMX and I like making stuff as a creative and as a designer. Um, my mentality, it's the same today, is I only like to do things like kind of one way, the best I can. So when I designed products, or we made ads, or we had riders on our team, we always tried to just do it the best we could. We were a small brand, but we wanted a big image. And so we worked hard on try to be innovative with the product designs, try to be innovative graphically, try to be innovative with our advertising. The business continued as it grew, was investing money back into the business. And then we hired the best talent we could. We had the best riders ever. It was pretty phenomenal time, both in freestyle and BMX race. We had the best riders. And that's pretty intoxicating too, when you go to an event and, we had a look, which, was our kit with our team riders and the bikes, everything looked super tight. And but that was by design. We crafted a look and feel for our team, both freestyle and BMX, which is really iconic today. I think it still kind of stands the test of time. The other deal is just having incredible talent on our team that also gelled well personality-wise with our philosophy of how we wanted to do business, So it was a really, really magical time. And the business of BMX was incredibly healthy. It was a strong business, and we were making money. And because of that, we could afford to pay our riders well, handsomely.
Yeah.
In the late 80s, I had riders, 14 to 18 to 20-year-old riders making between, $30,000-$40,000 maybe on the low end, up to someone like Pete Lonkarovich was probably excess of 125,000. And that was the salary. So it was 80s, awesome.
That's a lot of money. So imagine being I can imagine being 14. I could only imagine being 14 and making 30 or 40 grand. But in the 80s? Yeah. And that's at an amateur level. So the pros are making $125. I think in today's numbers that'd be probably closer to about, I don't know, 270 or something ridiculous like that. I don't know.
So but it was, it was,
it's good cheddar.
Yeah, well, the business was, we could reciprocate. We were doing well. The riders could do well. Everything was healthy. The business was healthy, and the company was healthy, and we could take care of our riders. We had huge camaraderie. We had a lot of fun. Dynamics were great within the business. I had my younger brother, Ron Haro, that worked for me. Bill Hawkins, rest in peace, who just passed away here recently. They were both team managers for me. My brother Ron, while he rode BMX for fun, he is a sports-minded guy. I'm not a super sports-minded guy. And when I say that is, he's very jockey. He loves football.
I remember him being kind of like a stockier muscle dude. Yeah.
But his deal was he liked sports. He liked stick and ball sports and football and baseball and all that, which is all cool. But he's super down with the athletes and the stats and what they've done. And so Ronnie and Bill were both of that mindset, and they were really great on the team of the Haro team because they were looking for talent. They were looking for the new talent, and in kind of in a way like scouting, if you will.
Yeah.
So while I was focused on the design with the business and creating products, and my career as a freestyle BMX rider was winding down, again, I had good guys on the team that were out there looking for that next generation, the next rider that was going to be the Matt Hoffman, who was one of our riders at the time. He was a young 13, 14-year-old kid. He turned out to be this phenom rider, and he was on our team.
Essentially created the X Games. Essentially. Well, ESPN created it, but based on what he was doing in contests. Yeah. So the contest he was running, excuse me.
So again, all that human dynamic and again trying to hire the right people around you is really important.
That's
you know?
huge.
I can't, you know, I'm stoked, and you know, I can take credit for certain things, but you can't take all the credit. You know,
Right.
it takes a good team.
So we sell we sell it. So I would have been cool. I rode for Haro, but it wasn't your Haro. It was the afterwards. Still was super proud to run that name across my chest when I did do so. What was life like after you sold the company?
So I entered an agreement in 1987 to sell the business, which was very exciting. The business was strong, you know, the offer was good, and I had a 5-year deal. I had a 5-year buyout, and then I had a 2-year non-compete. So, you know, here you are, a 27-year-old high school graduate that had spent, you know, his formidable years creating a business, starting a sport, touring around the world, having this success. I sell the business. It's exciting because, you know, we're on top of the world. And, you know, about 3 years into the deal, the wheels come off of BMX. BMX blows up, and it's in a major slump. So at that point, people were like, thought I was a genius. Like, how did you know that the sport was gonna go in the tank? And I'm like, I had no idea. I just got lucky, and I would have salespeople, because now we had a sales force with us with West Coast Cycle who we're working with. They're like, you need to create another sport. Like, you can magically come up with a new sport. You know, obviously they lost income because they weren't selling as many bikes, but the business went into the tank for a while. There was a couple of years where the business was down, and you know, BMX bikes weren't that popular, and you know, kids were doing other things at that time. So, you know, your question back, so you sell the company, and what was that like? So fast forward, my contract is up, and today is my last day. You're the president, you know. Tomorrow you're
just some dude.
You're just some dude. You're yesterday's news within the business.
You were just some dude even when you're president, but yeah.
So that's a crazy transition. You know, now you're in your early 30s. You'd sold the company, and you did okay from that, but you spent most of your life working and building this thing, and all of a sudden it's not your baby anymore. So,
and those are some long hours you put in.
Yeah, but it was all good. It was all fun.
Like passion hours, but I mean, but to give it, to be that fully invested in something, and then wake up the next day,
it's literally
more or less, and not do it.
It's literally that. I mean,
it's like
today you're there,
process.
You're working, and you're part of the company, and the next day you're not. You know, and there's a new boss in there, and there's a new sheriff in town, the new president, and all that kind of good stuff. So, you know, it's a crazy transition. And again, go back to the family tree. You know, my parents love them dearly, but they've never had a business. They didn't know what to tell me. They didn't know how to coach me.
More firsts for you still.
Yeah, you know, there was no coaching about how to behave or react post sale of your business that has your last name on it. And you know, that was another trying time of life. It was growth. I mean, I can tell you, just because you're a San Diego guy, the Panikin, the little coffee house here in our town, I remember I was there one morning, and this woman had a Haro shirt on, and I said, oh, hey, nice Haro shirt. And she tells me, oh yeah, my kind of a little bit with a little attitude, she goes, oh yeah, my son rides for the company. I was like, oh wow, that's great. I hear they make nice stuff. And she was a little cocky, I remember, and I didn't want to tell her anything. I just said, oh, have a nice day. But those kind of moments have happened many times. You know, people talk about it, and you're like, all right. So it's funny. And then there's always the funny deals. Like, again, we'll talk about restaurants, but right next to my office here in Cardiff, there's a little breakfast lunch place, and some little kids. I was standing there in line, and I overheard the kids talking that they got their new Haro bikes, and I was with my girlfriend at the time, and she's like, you need to say something to them. I go, no, I'm not going to say anything. So anyway, she ended up going, you know who this guy is? This is Bob Haro. And the kids look at me like, Bob Haro, you know, the bike you have, the bicycle you have. And I remember the kid looks at me, and he kind of looking up at me, and kind of winks his eye, and he's like, you're old. How can you be Bob Haro? You know, or who's Bob Haro? He didn't even know that his
because
company,
it's not even to them. It's not a name. It's a brand of bike.
It's just a brand. Yeah. So there's been all kinds of funny moments post sale of the bike brand, and but at the end of the day, it's cool that it's still out there. It still has a following. I think that they do a good job of keeping the brand alive and the name alive, because I know a lot of brands, they don't make it. They don't make it. Something happens to them. They lose their mojo, and then next thing you know, they're at Walmart.
Yeah, they're definitely to their credit, they're definitely committed to racing and freestyle and the legacy of the sport. Yeah. So that's really cool. So I didn't press save last time we recorded this. I'm glad we didn't, though, because this is a much better interview in my opinion.
It is.
And what you don't know, the listener, is that he's running point. He's doing production and being interviewed. So, because typically I do it over Skype or FaceTime and record it, but we are right here at his office, at his desk, and he's pressing pause, and he's giving me hand signals to be quiet and not touch this and not move around. So this is pretty funny.
Command save.
And I have a special treat, which you will hear, is the music that's going on around here. So you are a creative, you are an artist. Tell us about what's going on with your projects now and life after, so to speak.
So, let me see here. How do I start that?
How do you start? It's a big story.
So, it's a story.
It's a story.
So, as we discussed a moment ago, post-sale, post-Haro bikes and things like that, there's a transition that happens, life after Haro bikes, and I took off about 8 months or so. I hung out and I worked out and I traveled and I partied with my friends and I do all that stuff, but I can only do that for so long. I was used to working. I was used to having a business. I like going to my office. I like making stuff. It's really cool. So I started up a little agency. It wasn't formal. It was just I started a little design business, and I was at a show in Europe and seeing my friends at Iron Horse Bicycle. Right next to them in their booth is Thor Motocross. So Thor, this is probably early 90s. I chat with the guys. They're in El Cajon here in San Diego. I'm in Cardiff in San Diego. And I said, hey, if you're looking for any freelance designers, I'm looking for some work. So I get teamed up with Thor, and Jim Gallagher, the art director there, meets with me, likes what I'm doing. I start my journey into the motorcycle world. They were one of my first clients, and fast forward 18 years later, I had picked up many clients within the motorcycle industry, even OEs, original equipment manufacturers like Yamaha, Kawasaki, Honda. Laguna Seca Raceway was my client. AMA Pro Racing was my client. I designed motocross gear. I designed print ads, all these different things. I just, again, got swept away by another passionate category that I like, because before BMX, I raced motorcycles. So I was swept away in that. At the same time, this is early, mid-90s, the sport of NASCAR is blowing up. And I get introduced to some people in that area, in that arena, and I get swept away with that business. So I've got clients within the NASCAR world. I've got Daytona Speedway was one of my clients, Richard Childress Racing. I was working with Darrell Waltrip, and others. And it was an exciting time. So that helped me kind of get over my post-Haro bikes hump. The business was going well, and I had some high-profile clients, and I was applying my design and creative skills. So it was good. It was a good time. So so you asked, again, I keep going backwards here, but you asked about
your world.
Yeah, oh, thanks. You asked about the music side of it.
So the music. So you kept designing, you found a way to incorporate your passion into your new business, which was really the same business, just with a different name.
It was just doing the same thing.
But you were doing the same thing. You went to your core competency, which is designing, being creative. Yeah. Went into the motorcycle world. That obviously led to some car stuff and some, I'm sure, some other products and things in that nature. And you even dabbled a bit back with bikes, and I know you partnered with Lynn Caston, and who created Redline, founded Redline, I should say, from back in the day. So the music, yeah, I mean, because I've been watching you on Instagram, and you got the SoundCloud going, and every now and then you'll post something, and it's very what is it, electro pop?
Electro pop, yeah, that's kind of the category, yeah, for sure. So it's very 80s pop, electronic pop music. So as a, again, go back to your roots. I mean, as a kid, as somebody in junior high and high school, I was a band geek. I played trumpet as a kid.
Trumpet?
I was a trumpet player.
A trumpet?
Yeah, I still like this trumpet. I can't play it anymore,
really?
But I do like it. I love the sound.
Sorry, I don't want to offend any trumpet players, but
So, but when
it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the description.
So, but what happened is, you're playing. I was a band geek, and you're in high school, and you're about 10th grade, and you realize that being a trumpet player is not as cool as being a motocross guy. Is what went through my head, or a surfer in my town. If you're a surfer, a skater, a BMX, or a moto guy, was way cooler than being a band geek at the time. And again, to the trumpet players out there that may be listening, I love the trumpet. I'm not embarrassed of that. The only thing I was embarrassed about, but being a band geek, is we had to wear really bad outfits, and we had to keep our hair really short, and I had a very militant band director at the time. So it was kind of easy to segue into doing the other action sports thing. But my passion for music has always been there. When the when the late 70s, early 80s came on, and alternative music was kicking in. I'm living in Los Angeles now. KROQ radio station was a huge alternative radio station, very popular back in the day, still popular today, but they were very, forward thinking with the music that they were sharing to the world, and that was my sound. I wasn't, I was done with the rock thing. I was done with all of that. I wanted, this was so fresh. I loved that sound. And for me, that sound that was so fresh was, I was smitten by electronic music. I loved keyboards. I loved synthesizers. I loved drum machines. I loved dance music. I loved clubby kind of stuff like that. And that got me. And then, for me, the bands back in those days of, whether it was the Depeche Modes and OMDs and the New Orders and the, Pet Shop Boys and all of this stuff. This was a sound
good stuff.
I just
it still
loved.
Holds up.
I still, I really like that sound. And, while I was doing, again, you go back to the 80s, everything's intertwined. All these things that I do are kind of intertwined. I was touring at that time, and I was traveling all over the world riding my BMX bike. Well, I would be in Berlin. I would be in London. I would be in
So you're getting
Paris.
Introduced to all this new great music.
I'm listening to all this music, before it even came to the shores here in the States. And I would, I'd go out, I'd do my shows and demos, and I'd meet local kids. They'd take me out to clubs or pubs, and I'd hear all this music, and I would go to the
record store.
I would go to the DJ and ask him what that track was, and I'd immediately.
I do the same thing.
I'd be at the record store, and I'd come home with all this vinyl. So that really, for the sound that I'd like to write and the music, that really inspired me. Again, inspiration, that inspired me to that sound and that genre. Comes another train.
Another train.
So, fast forward in that period of time, I buy one keyboard because I thought, well, what if I don't like it? I was in New York, and I went to the electronics store, and I bought a Casio keyboard. It was like $250, $300, whatever the deal was. I thought, well, if I don't dig it, I'm not that far out. I dug it. Fast forward, there was a point in my downstairs bedroom, I probably had about $40,000, $40,000 worth of music equipment in my room. I had, synthesizers everywhere and drum machines, and I had mixing board. And back in the day before digital audio, I had tape machines, and I started with 2-track, then 4-track, then 8-track, and then 16-track is what I started writing with. And so I've been in it forever, and my mentality in writing music was I didn't want to be a cover band. I didn't want to cover somebody else's music. My mentality was, like everything with design, is it's got to be your own deal. It's got to be you. So So I have a whole, many tracks from back in the day that are pretty funny to listen to now. And then, over years, you kind of improve your skills. So my true, real fun passion, besides my other design work I do, is working on music. And my plan is 2018 is I'm going to release some tracks, and I'm having fun with it. It makes me really happy. I don't need to make anything out of it. I just want to do it because I want to do it.
That's cool. That's cool. And again, executing on what you want to do.
That's it.
That's a theme. That's your theme. Well, man, it's my son's birthday today, so I have to cut this conversation short. So maybe another time. But I always ask this question to everybody on the podcast. And I'll ask you again, because we didn't record it the first time, apparently. What's one thing you wish everybody knew? So you're a kid coming up in the world trying to figure it out. What is it you want that person to know?
You mean word of advice?
What's one thing you wish they would know?
I think for me, and I just believe you have to believe in yourself, and you got to surround yourself with people that support you and your ideas. You can't hang out with anybody that doesn't believe. There's no need for that, and that old saying, I don't want to say shoulda, woulda, coulda. Mm-hmm. I just want to do things and hopefully be remembered for cool things that I've contributed, and stay humble. That's all I got.
Those are I feel like there's some lyrics in there.
Let's work on it.
Let's work on it. Well, thanks a lot, Bob. Always good having you on the show. And thanks for listening to the Gold Medal Mindset. Until we meet again, peace.